Hello, everyone. I have eventually two articles from the latest Library Resources and Technical Services I wanted to bring to y'all's attention. And this first one is actually something I suggested that we discuss at my interest group meeting tomorrow, so I probably should actually read it, which is why we are here today. I know we're putting out a lot of recordings, and we are very close to 100 people, so I'm excited. And this is a meditation on why we still need to buy physical media by Mr. Colin Higgins, and I'm gonna skip the summary slash abstract. And without further ado, let's get right on into it. Because for those of you that don't remember, technically, physical media is electronic resources. Alright, so for a brief moment in early June 2020, Gone with the Wind, a film released in 1939, held the first, eighth, and ninth spots on Amazon.com's list of film and television bestsellers for the DVD, Blu-ray disc, and 70th anniversary editions, respectively. Within a few days, all copies had sold out. At one point, a secondhand Blu-ray disc was the only version available for $334.01. Dang, I should have bought in on that one. Gone with the Wind is the highest grossing inflation-adjusted film of all time. It is technically a brilliant production, the most ambitious motion picture made to that point, and a faithful cinematic adaptation of a beloved novel. We could argue about the novel and the adaptation. It won 8 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Best Actress for Vivian Leigh, Best Director for Victor Fleming, and Hattie McDaniel won an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress, becoming the first black person to win an Oscar. Yes, and unfortunately, she wasn't even allowed to receive her Oscar. I think she was allowed to, sit at the back of the theater or something. Anyway, we have moved beyond. We are better people. Lee's performance is compelling and moving. The performances by Clark Gable and Olivia de Havilland are also notable. Oh, Clark Gable, swoon. It was my grandmother's favorite film, however, it's also too long. And in the second half, dull. Yeah, frightfully dull. Once you hit that intermission, just leave. I'm just gonna save it for you. If you are TLDR type people, just hit the intermission and go. You've gotten the best parts out of Gone with the Wind in the first half. So, history and did much to glorify the myth of the lost cause of the Confederacy. Again, not going down that rabbit hole, and it is racist, as black critics have pointed out since its release, and white audience have recently recognized. The surge of interest in purchasing physical copies of the film was triggered by the decision of HBO Max, a video streaming service, to remove access to Gone with the Wind during the protests following the death of George Floyd, a black man murdered in May 2020 by Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin. 2 weeks after its removal, the film reappeared, prefaced by an introduction from film scholar Jacqueline Stewart, who discussed its artistic achievements and racist historical inaccuracies. HBO's decision sparked a moral and commercial panic, leading to a surge in sales of optical disc copies of the film. This was despite the fact that although Gone with the Wind was unwatchable on HBO Max in June 2020, it remained available for digital purchase or rental on other platforms, including Amazon Prime, iTunes, Vudu, Google Play, and YouTube. Anyone who wanted to watch Gone with the Wind online could do so. The ethics of Gone with the Wind's removal and reframing have been widely discussed. As fascinated as I am by that topic, I do not wish to add to that discussion here. For this paper, what matters is the hurried removal from a major streaming service and the subsequent marketplace reaction. The incident, albeit briefly and superficially, prompted many film viewers to consider how they were watching film and to rediscover the advantages of supposedly superseded formats. Simultaneously, libraries were under much pressure to expand streaming provisions during the pandemic, and some institutions even moved toward streaming-preferred collection policies. This paper challenges the resulting assumptions that physical formats have become dispensable. Yeah, no, the DVD disc route was not what we thought it was going to be as someone who was raised in preservation understandings. In the months preceding Gone with the Wind furor, jurists had declared the death of both the DVD and the Blu-ray disc. Blu-ray did officially get canned, and that actually brought me joy, because for a while I was arguing, you can't visually tell the difference, and I still think you can visually tell the difference between regular resolution DVD and, for example, 4K and things like that. Yeah, the human eye blurs a lot of things just naturally, so part of me has always been you don't need that kind of sharpness. And it's also, one of those things like VHS versus Betamax, where the adult industry sector picked up one of the formats and not the other. And that, of course, that's the reason that won. Anyway, back to our article. The data on physical media sales and their decline in favor of streaming services support both these confident statements. For well over a decade, major corporations controlling distribution of books, music, film have promoted low-cost subscription models, offering immediate, inexpensive, and convenient access to cultural productions. For books and music, a counter-movement has led to a resurgence and indeed a revitalization of physical media. It is now a golden age for the production of vinyl records and hardcovers. I could argue that. All right. In contrast, commercial and consumer pushback against the commodification of film through instant access distribution has been less visible. Perhaps it's because DVDs and Blu-rays are more difficult to love than records and books, or because our visual media ecosystem is dominated by a small number of risk-averse corporations where, in the words of Martin Scorsese, the art of cinema is being systematically devalued, sidelined, demeaned, and reduced to its lowest common denominator, content. Yeah, I actually went down a little side trick on someone's comment. It was a gaffer talking about like how lighting has changed in the movies and why all the movies now just have this weird flat lighting. And part of it has to do with our change to LEDs and away from hot lights, but another part of it also has to do that people want to be able to stitch scenes together in any order they want, so they want all the lighting to look the same, which is kind of strange. Yeah, bring back the old ways. The demise of physical media has been predicted for years, long before 2020. DVD sales have declined annually since 2005, while Blu-ray disc sales have decreased annually since 2013. And again, as someone who lives in a remote area, let me tell you how well valued physical media is. In the quarters leading up to the COVID-19 pandemic, sales were dropping at an annualized rate of more than 20%. Although DVD sales but not Blu-ray disc sales increased during April and May 2020, sales continued to decline between 2021 and 2025. Meanwhile, subscriptions to and time spent watching streaming media are not only growing, they are accelerating, although signs of subscription fatigue have begun to emerge as more players enter the market. Yep, I agree to that. Netflix, Amazon Prime Video, Disney Plus have saturated the North American market and continue to add subscribers worldwide. New streaming services, often backed by major film and television production studios, have proliferated over the past 5 years. DVD and Blu-ray disc sales have declined in correlation with the expansion of these services. Many consider films on optical disc to be a superseded format, destined to follow the path of the VHS video cassette. In 2024, disc sales fell below 1 billion for the first time this century. And I'm quietly laughing because I remember when I really wanted to be an audiovisual preservationist and spent a lot of time learning how to well digitize VHS and pneumatics and things like that. I got told at one point, like, no one is ever going to become nostalgic for what do you call it? Electronic film or electronic video that's recorded on VHS. Like, it's not like vinyl where people are going to be like, oh, I have a warm, fuzzy feeling about the type of sound that comes out of, the analog with the pops and the whizzes. Like, no one's going to be, like, super excited to see VHS, like, artifacts and scratches and things like that. Well, the young people have proved us wrong, let me tell you. I need to go dig out, like, all of my old early digital cameras and sell them now while everyone is in the market and excited about it. Because I'm like, there were things to be said about VHS cassettes, and that's one of the reasons why, like, I saved so many of mine. Because in my case, like, there's stuff that I'm 99% certain is never going to get re-released on DVD. So I just keep the VHS in hopes that someday I'll get a player and rehook myself back together and digitize them for you. Although I probably won't be able to put them on YouTube because copyright. Anyway, this paper offers a reflection on market dynamics, significance, necessity, and current use of DVDs and Blu-ray discs 5 years after the withdrawal of Gone with the Wind, the earlier media assertions, and the onset of the Great Pandemic. It explores the implications for libraries of replacing physical media with streaming media. Film libraries can be expensive to acquire, difficult to catalog, and challenging to manage. They quickly lose relevance. Librarians may feel discomfort at the notion that we should collect films the same way we do books. For some time, the rapid emergence of high-definition streaming media services has prompted librarians to question the viability of their physical collections of audiovisual materials. And the case against physical media is clear, and for many libraries and library users, the question has been settled. 5 years ago, the Public Library Association asked, are we reaching the end of library DVD collections? On-demand streaming videos consume the mass market for DVDs and Blu-ray discs. Digitally distributed films are more affordable and accessible than their physical counterparts. Companies like Netflix, Amazon, Disney are part of a global trend towards the excess economy, where goods and services are rented rather than purchased. And these new delivery models, enabled by technological change, the decline of stable personal incomes during the Great Recession, and a shift toward urban lifestyles, are assumed to be more appealing to those raised in the digital age. What space, then, exists in the economy, society, culture, and the library for the DVD and Blu-ray disc? A significant one, as this paper will seek to demonstrate. Sales of DVDs and Blu-ray discs are indeed declining. Nevertheless, collections of DVDs and Blu-ray discs remain an integral part of our service provision and align with our values. Evidence suggests we live in a golden age for films on physical media. I have some sympathy for this position and believe there is evidence for it. This paper argues the continued relevance of these formats and asks librarians considering the removal of their film collections on optical disc to reflect on how this decision aligns with their collection management policies and the values of our profession. There's also, and I don't know, we'll probably get to this is only the introduction, but there's also the issue of equity and subscription access with large streaming platforms like Canopy. But we'll see what happens. We'll see how far this gets into that whole streaming headache. Because I don't know if some of you working at other college and university libraries have like hit that wall where finally just being like, yeah, you're gonna have to sign up for your own individual accounts because there's no way we can get you these movies because the institutional prices are just crazy. So, the rise and fall of the DVD and Blu-ray discs, the mid-1970s development of rival VHS formats, VHS by JVC and Betamax by Sony created a format war that stunted sales until VHS triumphed in the early 1980s. Again, thank you, adult industries. A similar conflict began to evolve in the early 1990s as two rival consortia developed competing high-density optical disc formats. An expert group of information technology industry representatives mandated convergence to a single standard, threatening to boycott both formats if independent development continued. As Taylor outlines, the DVD was the resulting compromise. Interesting. The first DVD was sold in 1996 in Japan. The format was released in the United States in 1997, in Europe in 1998, and in Australia in 1999. By the end of 97, 1 million discs featuring 530 film titles had been shipped to retailers. Sorry for the dyslexia. Initial sales disappointed, but because not all major Hollywood studios were committed to the format, and many did not release films on DVD until 1999, which is when I started buying DVDs. I have some very old DVDs. Sales accelerated dramatically in 1999. By the end of the year, 100 million units had been sold. DVD rentals outperformed VHS rentals for the first time in June 2003, by which time sales of the newer format had surpassed those of the older one. Best Buy, a major retailer, ceased stocking VHS in 2003, and Walmart, the world's largest company by revenue, filed suit in 2005. And I know I just said, you can't really visually tell the difference. There was actually a major visual difference between VHS and DVD for those of you who are too young to have experienced it. And there was also the fact that DVDs, much like CDs versus cassettes, they tended to be more durable. VHS itself, inside the actual cassette, the magnetic tape, that was the word I was looking for earlier, is relatively, durable inside the actual cassette. But if you just take out the cassette and compare it to having like a DVD out of its case, they're very different in terms of durability. The tape itself is actually much more fragile, which is why it's inside a cassette. Anyway, I'm sorry. I really wanted to do audio and video formats as my job in life. Can you tell? The surge in revenue it generated from the major studios lasted only a decade. Of the 42 top-selling DVDs in the United States, only one, Frozen, had been released since 2010. Frozen sold 18 million DVD and Blu-ray disc copies in the year of its release. 6 years later, Frozen 2, the best-selling disc of 2020, sold for fewer than 4 million. A dramatic reduction in DVD sales during 2018's Christmas from Hell was blamed for the closure of HMV, once the UK's largest music and film retailer. Sales of Blu-ray discs have been declining more slowly than DVDs, but from a lower base. Outside of North America, the medium never really took off as a mass-market product. An increasing number of films are being released on DVD, but not on Blu-ray. Many are no longer released on physical formats at all. Netflix has a policy of not releasing the films it produces or distributes on physical media, and most Apple TV Plus content remains exclusive to its streaming platform with limited availability in physical formats. And I'm so cheesed at Apple TV. If you don't watch my videos regularly, it's because they decided to sign a contract with the lovely F1 racing folks, so I can't watch F1 this season. Hopefully that'll change next year, and they'll get their heads out of their butt and actually go back to good cars and not what they're doing right now. Anyway, Samsung, which released the first Blu-ray disc player in 2006, announced in 2019 it would no longer develop new Blu-ray disc players for the US market, despite being the market leader. John Lewis, one of the UK's largest department store chains, stopped selling standalone DVD players in 2018. Man, I feel old. Okay, today only a handful of technology companies produce DVD and Blu-ray players. Just before the paper was finalized, Pioneer, recognized for its premium optical disc drives, has exited the market. I don't know if this is good or bad, but I'm pretty sure I still have blank DVDs and a whole bunch of cases from my last project. Oh, like 10, 15 years ago, like hiding in my house, and hope someone will love on them. The rise and current dominance of streaming video. So, the reason for the decline of DVDs and Blu-ray discs is clear to anyone with even the mildest interest in film. Digital distribution, as evidenced by rise in popularity and economic power of on-demand video streaming services, has consumed the market once occupied by two optical disc formats. For the price of a single disc and less than the cost of a cinema ticket, subscribers can obtain month-long access to a streaming service and watch as many films as they like. On-demand videos cannot be scratched, dropped on the floor, fall behind the sofa, or loaned to an unreliable friend. You know who I'm looking at. You do not have to put them back in a box, think about where to shelve them, or decide whether or how to interfile your DVDs with the Blu-ray discs. Your children cannot decorate them with smudgy fingerprints or attempt to balance them on their heads. Streaming services are affordable, convenient, and filled with addictive and exciting programming. Netflix was founded in 1997 as a rent-by-mail DVD business. Okay, I'm just gonna giggle again because I'm so old. I remember when Netflix was DVDs in the mail, and we were so excited to just, like, those of us who were film buffs and, like, got to go to the local film rental places. Like, we got to build up, like, a whole corpus of stuff in this, like, wish list, and then, like, when you mailed one back, it just automatically set you one off the wish list that was in the warehouse. And they weren't obviously always going to be in order, so it was always kind of a surprise, and yeah. And it was so great, because it was like $10, and you got, like, 3 DVDs by mail, and, you know, as soon as you return them, they send the next one. I don't know. I miss old school Netflix. I'm sorry. I miss old school Netflix. I wish Netflix would bring back old school Netflix for those of us who still have players and just want to play DVDs. Anyway, even as pre-streaming iteration, Netflix had a profitable business model. By 2009, 1.3% of all mail sent in the United States consisted of Netflix DVDs. They were keeping the postal system going. Over 3 decades, it has evolved into the world's most powerful film and television production distribution company, using on-demand video as a profitable revenue stream. In Q4 2024, Netflix surpassed 300 million subscribers with a quarterly revenue of $10.25 billion, exceeding expectations. Aggressive expansion, strategic deal-making, and early move into content creation have made it the streaming video service that continues to set benchmarks for the industry. In less than a decade, Netflix has transformed the creation and distribution of film and television. In 2013, House of Cards was the first show produced by Netflix. Beasts of No Nation was the first film exclusively distributed by Netflix in 2015. By 2021, the company was spending more than $17 billion on original content creation, annual figure it has since maintained, except for a dip in 2023. At the peak of its nascent dominance in the streaming sector, films produced or distributed by the company received 36 nominations at the 2021 Academy Awards, depending on how you define production. This was the second or third highest number in the awards' history. At the 2021 Emmy Awards, a Netflix production received an astounding 129 nominations, winning 44 awards, the most any company has received in a single year. So our friends at Amazon, and again, I'm so old, I remember when Amazon was literally just books. So Amazon expanded from books to video by 1998. At the time of writing, Amazon competes with Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia, and Alphabet to be the world's most valuable company by market capitalization. F you, Jeff Bezos. It is the second largest employer in the United States, the leading e-commerce platform, and a major player in fields such as cloud computing and artificial intelligence, and robotics, and replacing people with things. Anyway. I hate Amazon. I should not devolve into that. Its on-demand video streaming service has undergone several iterations. Launched in 2006, Amazon Unbox transitioned to Amazon Video On Demand, then Amazon Instant Video, and then finally just Amazon Video. This service, commonly known as Prime Video, offers Amazon Prime subscribers complimentary access to thousands of films and TV shows. And they keep trying to lure me in, and I just keep saying no. The number of subscribers is uncertain. Amazon has always been reticent about divulging commercially sensitive data, but in a 2021 letter to shareholders, Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos stated that Prime had surpassed 200 million global subscribers. Amazon now plays a prominent role in film and television production through Amazon Studios and by distributing content via Amazon Originals. Amazon Video differs from Netflix in that it also hosts live sporting events and offers content from other providers through add-on subscription channels. Most films and shows on the site are not free. Digital copies must be rented or purchased. Amazon's various services and technologies form a complex ecosystem. On-demand video is only part of the system, and analysts remain uncertain about the importance of streaming to Amazon's corporate objectives. As Bezos has stated, we get to monetize subscription video in a very unusual way. When we win a Golden Globe, it helps us sell more shoes. How Amazon is not, like, busted up as a monopoly, I do not understand, but conversation for another day. Disney Plus launched in the United States and Canada in November 2019, expanding to European and Latin American countries throughout 2020. On its first day, it gained more than 10 million subscribers by October 21. This number had grown to more than 118 million. Disney Plus primarily focuses on distributing Disney's own films and shows, therefore has fewer productions available to watch than its two main rivals. However, aggressive expansion throughout the 2010s means Disney holds the right to two of the most successful franchises in film history, Star Wars and the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It also owns the animation studio Pixar and 20th Century Studios, formerly 20th Century Fox, which has a lot of great movies, with its library of landmarks in cinema history, from The Sound of Music and Cleopatra to Alien and Avatar. Even without these acquisitions, Disney Archive would still be an enviable commercial property, containing 500 films, 7,500 television shows, many of which have never been made available through Netflix, Amazon, or their rivals. And unlike Netflix and Amazon Prime Video, which offer extensive selections of original licensed films and shows, Apple TV Plus features content that Apple has produced or commissioned. As indicated by its name, the platform focuses on shows, although it also hosts a small number of high-profile films. Although its library is smaller than competitors, Apple TV Plus stands out because of its high-quality productions and its curated viewing experience. Other significant players in the North American streaming video market include Hulu, which is now part of Disney, Paramount Plus, Peacock, HBO Max, and Starz. And we didn't even get into the exciting free ones like Tubi. Anyway, complex legal limitations and commercial agreements lead to variations in the availability of on-demand video streaming across different countries and regions. Although not strictly an on-demand service, the BBC's iPlayer competes with Netflix and Amazon in the UK by allowing British television license payers to watch content recently broadcast on the various BBC television stations, and has broadened its offerings over the last decade to include classic programming. Beyond North America and Europe, numerous regional streaming services have emerged catering to local preferences and consumption habits. They offer language-specific programming, distinctive cultural content, and often hybrid distribution models, just to make our lives more fun, right? E-resources, people? In India, Jio Hotstar and Z5 both host international and local films, along with a range of shows and live sports, particularly cricket, which is not going to get taken up in America at all. In China, services such as iQIYI, Tencent Video, and Youku dominate the market. Given the challenges faced by Western firms, no major American firms will be permitted to enter the Chinese market in the medium term. Yeah, I can see that. Within libraries, too, streaming is now firmly established. Relevance and Lombardo have reviewed the current state of practice and find that streaming represents the dominant mode of AV access in higher ed, ding ding ding, even as affordability, licensing, and sustainability remain concerns. Their survey on the field provides crucial context. Even as libraries increasingly build collections around streaming, questions remain about the long-term viability of these strategies, especially in relation to equitable access. Yes, I touched on that for a whole 5 seconds. So what are some failures of streaming video? So these facts diminish the importance of DVDs and Blu-ray discs to film culture and to the libraries that provide access to that culture to their users. But they do not make the optical disc an irrelevant or obsolete format. Just as ebooks did not eliminate paperbacks and hardbound, as streaming video has transformed the film ecosystem without leading to the extinction of DVDs and Blu-rays. There are reasons to continue buying and watching films on optical disc, but there are also reasons why streaming video fails film viewers, whether they be cineasts or casual fans. Before discussing the reasons why optical discs might be preferred over streaming video, I will reflect on the limitations of Netflix, Amazon, Disney Plus, and their competitors. So the key limitation of streaming video lies in the narrow, commercially created, and restricted access provided to subscribers. It's easier to watch a film than ever before, but the ability to choose which film to watch has become more difficult. Ain't that the truth? It's my one issue with Tubi. It auto starts all sorts of things on you, and you're like, hang on. Didn't necessarily say I wanted to be here for the next 6 hours watching good movies. Streaming video is not like streaming audio. For both, recommendation algorithms purposefully restrict choice. That'll get better with AI. But the choice available to listeners of Apple Music, for example, more than 100 million songs, is on a different scale to the choice available to viewers on Apple TV Plus, only about 80 films. This difference in scale is purposeful and part of the business model of the streaming platforms. Netflix and its rivals have a different operating model from Spotify and its rivals, and not only because there are far fewer films than songs. Video streaming services are limited both by accident and by design. They are intended to narrow choice, providing the consumer with a kind of Goldilocks content that, in the word of an Economist article, is neither too familiar nor too novel. It is worth comparing the two earlier mentioned services. Spotify has established partnerships with all the major record labels as well as thousands of independent labels and distributors. This extensive network grants us access to the most commercially available songs across a wide range of genres and eras. If a song has been released by a major label or many indie labels, you will find it on Spotify in almost all cases. Film rights tend to be more fragmented across studios, distributors, regional licensing arrangements, complicating the ability of any streaming platform to provide a film library with any degree of comprehensiveness. Netflix restricts the number and availability of the films it offers to control costs, maintain exclusivity, and rotate its content to keep the catalog looking fresh and competitive. Unlike music streaming, availability of films on video streaming services is selective and constantly evolving. Although the number of songs available for streaming via Spotify has increased over time, the number of films on Netflix has decreased. And although Amazon's library is growing, many of the films available for Prime subscribers to watch for free are low budget, often poor quality versions of films that are out of copyright. I'm just laughing here because one of the things I kind of discovered on Tubi, and I don't know if anyone's poked around on Tubi long enough for this, but Tubi makes some very interesting, somewhat compelling knockoffs of like major films. So I ended up watching like a Five Nights at Freddy's knockoff and like a Squid Games sort of knockoff. And the Squid Games knockoff was actually pretty good. I almost like was gonna drag my husband and make him watch it because I'm like, what's this? This is neat. It's Americans competing for, to be an icon influencer or something. Anyway, they are low budget, and they are very much, you can tell, inspired by something directly. But they're also kind of fun. Gotta admit it, Tubi. Most streaming films on Amazon need to be purchased, regardless of whether you are a Prime member. Currently, Amazon offers 13,000 films free to North America subscribers, Netflix offers 3,700, and Disney Plus offers 500, most being their own productions. At its site, as a mail-order DVD service, Netflix provides access to 70,000 titles. This represents a 95% reduction in available titles. Holy shnikes! I never realized that. I mean, granted, for them, it's probably a boon because they don't have to deal with warehouses and, employees, having to pull them, but 70,000, that's just mind-blowing. We had so much more content in the 90s. This shift highlights the trend noted earlier, producing exclusive content rather than licensing third-party films. Disney's former chief executive, Michael Eisner, noted Netflix chairman Reed Hastings created a business strategy that was buying everybody's library. Everybody agreed to sell their library to him, which was probably a mistake for them, but they made a lot of money on it and kept a lot of companies afloat. As films were withdrawn by studios, setting up their own streaming services, Netflix produced more of its own content. Since 2022, more than half of its offerings have been original productions, generating in response to removal content from studios with their own platforms. Furthermore, these companies were spending billions of dollars on mergers and acquisitions, partly to gain exclusive access to intellectual property, ensuring Amazon and Netflix could not license it. As in essence, Netflix was spending tens of billions creating films and shows for their service, while Disney was spending tens of billions to keep content off of these services. Over time, this resulted in fewer choices, both in quantity and variety, as streaming services produce generic content manufactured to attract the broadest audience. Again, I'm old. This reminds me of cable TV. As a for-profit company, Netflix strives to maximize revenue by delivering what customers want. Netflix and Amazon have a corporate interest in catering to audiences rather than challenging them. Netflix has faced criticism for limiting the creativity of writers and directors. However, it's unclear whether these limitations are stricter than those imposed by traditional film and television production companies. Netflix and Amazon produce content, not art. Vanity Fair journalist Nick Bilton has expressed a concern that cinema and television are being replaced by digital wallpaper. Films with small, niche audiences are often overlooked, as are films that may not have immediate commercial appeal. Finding the right platform to watch a film that is not currently being marketed can be difficult. Acknowledging that he's overwhelmed with content but lacking choice and agency in his film watching, a critic Adam Bowie has noted, "What I don't know is where I can watch Inception, or Star Wars, or Psycho, or Gone with the Wind, or Bringing Up Baby on any given day. Are they on Netflix? Are they on Amazon? Maybe, maybe not. Physical collections! Eliminate this uncertainty." So what are the benefits of actual optical media? For years, DVDs, like the VHS before them, served as a means for film studios to continue profiting from productions at a low cost, long after the film's theatrical run. DVDs were highly profitable for film studios and distributors, indeed usually more profitable than the earnings from a cinematic release. Theatrical revenue accounted for 55% of an average film's revenue in 1980, but only 20% by 2007. Most of the remaining 80% was generated from the sale and rental of home entertainment releases. Bring back the video store. We were very, very, sustainable. There we go. Profit margins on DVD sales are twice those of VHS, while the more expensive Blu-rays generate an even greater profit for producers and distributors. There is little difference in the production costs in different forms of optical media, moving consumers from physical to digital media and further reduced distribution costs. So, Steven Silver has suggested that the COVID-19 pandemic allowed cynical studio executives to move away from physical media even faster and implement aggressive plans to launch new streaming platforms at a time when their customers were distracted and vulnerable. As Heller and Salzman have written, Disney has long been an expert in engineering ownership and non-ownership to maximize profit. So the first DVDs sold in the United States were priced at a discounted rate of $24.99, equivalent to $42.69 at time of writing, and prices have been declining for 25 years. For box office hits, film producers no longer seek significant profit from film sales on disc, and consumers show less interest in viewing films via these formats, which reduces demand and thus price. Basic economics. Both buyers and sellers have moved online where films can be accessed more easily and inexpensively, benefiting both parties. Producers accept low profit margins on the discs they still sell because cheap DVDs near the supermarket checkouts often serve as miniature billboards for theatrical sequels, toys, clothes, lunchboxes, and cereals in nearby aisles, as well as spin-off shows on Netflix and Disney+. The DVD has become a disposable commodity. Thrift stores are filled with them. Go buy some. During the COVID-19 pandemic lockdowns and the clearances they inspired, it was common to see boxes of DVDs on the footpaths of my neighborhood, free to a good home. And I would have taken them all. Maybe not them all, but... When Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer appeared in the high-resolution 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray format in November 2023, all copies sold out within a week. I've never seen Oppenheimer, so I can't really tell if it has like huge amounts of intricate detail where having that much precision in your encoding would matter, but hey, teach their own. Nolan, along with the directors James Cameron, Guillermo del Toro, and Edgar Wright, has encouraged film fans to purchase optical disc versions of their films rather than watch them on the streaming services. In Nolan's words, there is a value in a version you can buy and own at home and put on a shelf so no evil streaming service can come and steal it from you. Yes, many librarians, we probably remember that time when, was it Kindle? I think it was Amazon's Kindle. Could have been Barnes & Noble, because we were both running those devices at the time. But yeah, 1984 got zicked off everybody's ebook reader at one time, including a whole bunch of people that were probably reading it for class and had notes. And it being 1984 just made us all have a good time. Yeah. Anyway, I know I digress way too much. Streaming has surpassed DVD and Blu-ray disc sales, but sales figures are only part of the story of these formats and may not signal the impending end of optical discs. A niche market for DVDs, and particularly Blu-ray discs, and the higher resolution 4K UHD format, whose sales have been rising, have been quietly developing for a decade, expanding as mass market has declined. A British news magazine may have put it hyperbolically, although not unjustifiably, when it declared, "Don't believe the sales figures, DVDs are thriving." The pushback against streaming media is real and is both principled and practical. DVDs and Blu-ray discs serve a different purpose than streaming video for cinephiles and fans of classic films, as well as the companies that cater to them. Streaming services have little interest in older films. Finding many such titles on Amazon Prime can be challenging, while you struggle to find any on Netflix. Production companies that own the rights to these films are increasingly granting access to their archival material to niche DVD and Blu-ray disc distributors, and these distributors restore these high-quality films, package them superbly, and offer features that help film enthusiasts contextualize and understand them. Film fans are willing to pay a high price for these products, and prominent distributors of older and art house films include Criterion Collection, Arrow Video, BFI, and Eureka's Masters of Cinema. The market is also thriving thanks to smaller distributors such as Kino Lorber, Indicator, and Vinegar Syndrome. Of course, some films are too niche even for these labels, and restoration and release incur costs. However, for many films, particularly older ones, optical discs have become the only means of viewing them, and thanks to high-quality restorations, the viewing experience has never been better. Optical disc formats also offer advantages of accessibility, providing consistently available and standardized closed captioning options, which is very important for, universal design. These features are often implemented inconsistently or missing on streaming platforms. Closed captioning displays on-screen text that reduces spoken dialogue and relevant non-speech audio such as music cues, sound effects, and speaker identification, ensuring greater accessibility for deaf and hard-of-hearing viewers. And also, a lot of people nowadays apparently just like to leave that closed captioning on, so, you might not get that with streaming. Blu-ray disc and higher resolution 4K format are still the gold standard for picture and sound quality. These streamers have been catching up, but only for newer releases. For older films, versions on optical disc are nearly always superior to those on the streaming platforms, even if they are present on those platforms at all. And DVDs and Blu-ray discs offer several advantages, including bonus content such as commentary tracks and special features, which are sometimes available on Disney Plus, but never on Netflix or Amazon. And that is something you young people who haven't played with optical discs are missing, because there was quite a bit of bundled features when we were buying them, at least in the early days. Additionally, they provide permanence of ownership and reliable offline accessibility. When you own a disc, you own the disc. You trust you can watch it whenever you want and learn more about the films you love by watching the bonus features. That's why I love borrowing them from other libraries. When you subscribe to a streaming service, you own nothing, and the films you watch are liable to be removed at short notice. Even purchasing a film on a service like Amazon comes with a risk. A notable incident occurred in 2009 when Amazon remotely deleted copies of George Orwell's 1984 and Animal Farm from Kindles due to rights issues, demonstrating how digital ownership can be revoked without warning. I know I just mentioned this. I'm sorry I couldn't come up with the exact titles and dates. Purchasing via video on demand is merely a form of licensing, and purchases may be lost if a distributor is ever acquired, merged, ceases operation, or goes bankrupt. Having a physical item allows for a tangible connection, holding it, touching it, placing it on a bookshelf. This greater physical engagement enables greater emotional and intellectual engagement. Streaming services depend on reliable internet connectivity and will feature compressed video, most visible in dark scenes, causing sunsets, for example, to look bloxy and pixelated. The sound on streaming video is also compressed. On optical media, it is lossless. These limitations raise questions about whether digital streaming should ever fully replace physical media in libraries, especially for patrons seeking high-fidelity content, older and rare titles not offered by commercial services, or equitable access unhindered by bandwidth constraints. That last one is why video stores, until the pandemic, did really, really well out in rural areas. In fact, I can't remember who wrote a book about it, but somebody did, some other faculty member wrote a book about, like, how in many rural areas, the VHS rental places, video rental places tended to be like bundled with another service. You'd have like a laundromat that also rented videos, or you'd have like a bodega that also rented videos, or a hair salon that also rented videos, as opposed to just having a freestanding video store. But in our town, we had a really, really big family video, and I remember when we first moved up here like 11 years ago, I was like, holy smokes, that thing is gigantic. Do people like still rent movies? And our one adult bookstore that is all the way right on the other side of the town borders. They also have a lot of DVDs. At first, I thought that was weird because everybody can go online and find adult content now. But again, when I first moved up here, before we ended up getting on like the fiber optic, our electrical co-op built for us, we were on satellite internet, and you would not want to watch videos on that. It would constantly crash, and especially if you were trying to watch adult content to get yourself in the mood, that was kind of frustrating. So I heard from my spouse. But I definitely know that, like, we had a very good, robust video store. And we also had, until they killed them, very heavy usage in our red boxes. That's why I was so sad when that finally went under as well. So, yeah. Bandwidth constraints are a very real thing. The digital divide still exists. There's still rural places you can move to that you may want to invest in a player. In any case, none of the major commercial streaming services offer subscription models to libraries, and those that do provide a more limited selection of films, a challenge that has been recognized for some time. Most notable service is Canopy, which offers a curated selection of independent films, classic cinema, documentaries, and educational stuff. Canopy's content focuses on films' ecosystems, more intellectual and artistic corners, with many titles sourced from Criterion, PBS, and independent art house distributor A24. By contrast, Hoopla Digital, operated by Midwest Tape, I miss Midwest Tape, offers a broader and more commercial selection, including mainstream films and television shows. Whereas Canopy uses a quota-based access model, Hoopla allows simultaneous access but imposes borrowing limits. It also functions on a transactional model, which may pressure library budgets. The third major player in the market is Overdrive, whose Libby app is known for ebooks and audiobooks. Its content tends to be more limited and focused on niche, independent, or educational genres. Less widely adopted, Swank Digital Campus, which we have, is a streaming media vendor offering a fairly large and diverse catalog, and is a growing player in the academic library market. Compared with major commercial streaming platforms, library streaming services lack in diversity, consistency, and user experience, and they do not make substantial investments in licensing popular titles or creating exclusive content. More of our assumptions that users inherently prefer streaming are not consistently supported by evidence. At Penn State, DVD circulation sometimes exceeded streaming usage of identical titles on campus. canopy, contradicting assumptions about universal streaming preference, and demonstrating persistent patron demand for physical formats. It is unclear whether uses patterns are isolated to this institution or are part of a broader trend, but it offers evidence that complicates the narrative of streaming's inevitability and supports the argument that physical formats continue to serve critical user needs. Alright, what are the values of librarianship? In his 1946 essay, Books versus Cigarettes. I just picturing my dad reading when I was growing up. Books and cigarettes, and they all smell great. George Orwell argued that books, then regarded as a luxury, were more economical than cigarettes over time because they had lasting significance and were collected rather than consumed and forgotten. The same logic remains relevant today for DVDs and Blu-ray discs, which may appear to be a costly investment for individuals or libraries, but may prove more cost-effective than streaming subscriptions when viewed over the medium to long term. An optical disc enables permanent access to a film, eliminating the need for third-party services. Similar arguments have been made for music collections, where physical formats like vinyl have experienced a revival, suggesting perceived obsolescence of discs may be overstated across different media. In addition to economic considerations, the cultural importance of physical media aligns with some of the key values of librarianship, including preservation, intellectual freedom, privacy, and access. Streaming services emphasize consumption rather than collection. They encourage passive and forgettable viewing of fleeting content shaped by engagement algorithms. By contrast, a well-managed library prioritizes selecting, preserving, and revisiting physical media based on cultural, personal, or scholarly value. Librarians facilitate democratic access to cultural works. Are not just content distributors. Depending on the streaming platforms, with their ever-changing catalogs and algorithm-driven control, undermines our social role. Libraries should continue to collect and preserve physical media, and in doing so, serving as a buffer against the impermanence of digital content. Exploring tactile physical media collections in person offers a more meaningful and fulfilling discovering experience than anything provided by algorithm-based streaming platforms. And DVDs and Blu-ray discs are things you can hold, see, and touch. Curation by librarians and library user borrowing is purposeful and intentional and encourages serendipity and cultural risk-taking. As Rachel P. King points out, unrestricted access to physical media in libraries can boost user satisfaction and encourage exploration. And I highly encourage that. Like, here we have our DVD collection. We at least have all the cases out so that you can pull them out and like read the back of the boxes and stuff. The last place I worked, it was kind of tough because even though everything was listed in our catalog because of our trust level in the community colleges, I'll just be honest. We had to keep all those in the closed stack, so you couldn't do any like free browsing unless you happened to work there, and then you could stand in the back of the stacks and like pick out cool stuff, cool documentaries. But if you weren't working there, it was a lot harder to like get an idea of what the heck we had. So, yeah, please let people browse your DVD boxes, if not the actual discs themselves. Sorry, just trying to figure out where I came off on. In a marketplace where streaming services and rights owners alter the content of their films to update special effects, remove language and content judged as inappropriate, adjust aspect ratios to fit best-selling televisions better, or alter any aspect of film at the whim of a director, producer, or studio executive, optical disc can freeze a production in time, ensuring its artistic integrity. And I kind of like this, because again, I'm old. And one of the things I inherited that my dad bought was the original Fox-released VHS of the first 3 Star Wars movies. I will not talk about the other 6. And then I have the other one that got released later in the 90s that I have warm fuzzy memories of my dad taking me to see in person, which is when they redid the special effects in the Star Wars movies and added additional people walking around in the background and a couple of more scenes with Jabba the Hutt. But my dad also bought the 3 VHS THX version of that. And yeah, you could compare and contrast if I could fire up a couple VCRs for you. But it is interesting to see that frozen in time, especially like this just said, when people end up adding in and altering and moving stuff around. Same goes for Disney, because Disney's done a lot of strange editing of the past, where I'm just kind of like, how about you just put a disclaimer in there that was like, well, you didn't know this was racist at the time. Or we didn't care, and yeah. Otherwise, we just got a bunch of blackout and recuts and Oceania has always been at war with Eurasia, right? Right. Okay. As noted earlier, streaming services have many drawbacks, including licensing limitations and variable availability, which hinder persistent access to many films. Commercial and licensing imperatives can and do make films disappear without explanation from streaming services in unpredictable and arbitrary ways. Libraries, by contrast, aim to maintain consistent, accessible, and diverse collections, ensuring reliable access to a wide variety of films, including rarer, older, and harder-to-find titles. The typical American spends more than 500 hours annually on streaming services subscriptions. That is a lot. I feel bad. Well, I guess if you add up my cable bill, it's way more than that. I'm old and I paid for cable because I just feel rich enough to have cable. Not every American can afford this or even afford a Netflix subscription, and pricing models that used to be simple are now complex, with tier subscriptions for multiple users and access to higher definition or ad-free content. That's why we're paying for YouTube Premium. People who cannot afford to watch the latest Marvel film, the latest season of The White Lotus, or Andor may feel excluded from a culture they want to engage with. Ding, 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 that would be me, because I would like to watch some things that I keep seeing, like Squid Games, but I can't, because I'm not paying extra money for more streaming services. Should the library not enable it, if there is an easy and inexpensive way to provide free access to this culture for anyone who wishes to do so? So we got a conclusion, another 5 pages, but hopefully the conclusion is shorter than that. In June 2020, brief surge in demand for physical copies of Gone with the Wind was more than just a market curiosity. It was a revealing moment that exposed an underappreciated fragility in our digital film ecosystem. Making a cultural landmark temporarily inaccessible on a major streaming platform caused viewers to instinctively reach for the permanence and certainty that physical media provides. Occurring at the height of pandemic-driven streaming consumption, this episode inadvertently demonstrated reports the death of DVDs and Blu-ray discs has been exaggerated. Although the mass market for watching films has migrated to streaming services, physical media serves distinct and irreplaceable functions that align with the values of our profession. The success of smaller distributors like Criterion Collection and Arrow Video, the sold-out release of 4K copies of Oppenheimer, and the activism of directors advocating for physical ownership point to a medium that has found new purpose rather than faded into obsolescence. For libraries, the choice between physical and streaming media should not merely be a practical decision about space budgets or patron preferences, and it should not be framed as a binary choice. Yes, the prison of two ideas. Stop it. For all their convenience and affordability, streaming services operate according to commercial imperatives that are at odds with library values. So much of capitalism just naturally is at odds with our values, but anyway. When we outsource the film collections to Netflix, Amazon, Disney+, we seek control over what our communities can access, when they can access it, and under what conditions. Unfortunately, faculty find a lot of these videos on one of the streaming services and then expect us to be able to find it somehow, some other way, and then they get disappointed when we can't. It's like, well, I gotta tell my kids I'm gonna sign up for a free streaming account, or chuck up $20 to the capitalism. We see control of what communities can access, when, and under what conditions. So, DVDs and Blu-ray discs, by contrast, embody the principles of permanence, equity of access, and intellectual freedom that define our profession. They ensure films remain available regardless of corporate strategy, licensing disputes, or shifting cultural sensitivities. They provide the highest quality viewing experience for classic and art house cinema, which streaming services largely ignore. Again, capitalism. They offer the serendipitous discovery that browsing library shelves allows, free from the recommendations of algorithmic curation. And they democratize access to visual culture, ensuring economic barriers do not exclude members of our communities from participating in shared cultural conversations. Just as we would not consider replacing our book collections with subscriptions to Kindle Unlimited, we should be cautious about abandoning optical discs in favor of streaming services that offer less choice, lower quality, and no guarantee of continued access. Again, just laughing because before I hired in here, I forget how close it was to when I graduated from library school, but I do remember when the University of Michigan Business Library went completely bookless and are like, we have one book on a shelf and everything else is electronic, and it was very much seen as crazy. And now it's like, so forward facing, nobody's surprised, but again, I don't advocate for just canceling everything in favor of electronic. That's also not a good idea. No guarantee of continued access, so although these services kept us entertained during lockdowns, they also reveal their dependence on corporate goodwill, reliable internet connectivity, and monthly subscription fees. Libraries that maintain their DVD and Blu-ray collections could continue serving patrons regardless of bandwidth limitations, subscription costs, I blanked and I lost it, or licensing changes. So, while studies such as Serrano and Fernandez illustrate the appeal of streaming preferred policies during crisis conditions, they also highlight the risk of over-reliance on licensed access. Also, Proctor's finding on user demand for DVDs complicate the narrative of streaming inevitability, and Levinson and Lombardo remind us the current dominance of streaming in libraries is not without significant unresolved challenges. So together, the scholarship demonstrates physical and digital media should not be positioned as mutually exclusive, but as complementary forms of access. For libraries, the choice should be guided not only by efficiency and convenience, but enduring values of permanence, accessibility, and intellectual freedom. 5 years after the Gone with the Wind incident, the case for physical media has strengthened as subscription fatigue sets in and streaming services consolidate around ever narrower content strategies. Librarians considering future film collections should not ask whether DVDs and Blu-ray discs are commercially viable in the mass market, but rather whether maintaining these collections serves the mission and values of our institution. The answer the paper suggests is unequivocally yes! Libraries that preserve physical media collections provide the communities with something increasingly rare and valuable, the assurance that cultural works remain accessible, complete, and unaltered, available to anyone who seeks them out. Which may not work if you're small, but if you're larger, or you can tap into people, or you can borrow things, then cool. Alright, this is all the extra notes. Thank you for sitting with me for almost an hour. Hopefully you enjoyed my side trips and anecdotes, but if not, feel free to not come back. It's okay. The next one I got from this particular source will be on an indigenous collection of audiovisual media, which should be pretty interesting. So please come back for that if you haven't already read it in LRTS. And if you have, please leave thoughts on whether you think this is true or not. Should we keep buying physical media? I mean, I think it's a given, but perhaps you have other ideas in terms of budget and affordability and trying to make sure everybody's needs are balanced. So if you do, please leave them in the comments. Lord knows I love a conversation.